Welcome to Empowering Chats with Susan Burrell. This is where we have deep, intimate conversations about self-empowerment and future existence. I am an intuitive healer and a light leader who has been called to activate other light leaders. So I'm curious, are you one of them? So by listening, lean in and see if you are ready to be that eternal potential you've been called to be. Using your bravery, your talent, your tenacity, can you be innovative and adventurous in order to activate your light and lead from that place? This is where we learn how to love ourselves from the inside out and love the whole world over and over again. Enjoy the show. Hey, everybody. We're just trucking along in 2024. The overarching theme is Be Potential, and we are now in May. And in the merry month of May, the theme is talent or transcend. So having transcendent talent. I don't think that's redundant. But anyway, this is what talent means. Special ability or natural ability, aptitude, gift, capacity, genius, skill. And then transcendence is to rise above, go beyond, exceed in excellence. So I want you to ask yourselves, what are your special skills, talent, your particular genius? And are you actually fulfilling your potential? Are you exceeding or excelling in your talent, in utilizing those talents? And perhaps you haven't even really delved into within yourself, what are your gifts, your talents, and bring them forward. So this is the month of May, everybody, and it's the year of potential. So I invite you to investigate within yourself, what are your skills? What is your talent? And really begin to flesh that out, if you will. Really begin to bring that into focus so that you can really become the potential you were born to be. Talent. Love it, love it, love it. Enjoy the show. So you guys, I have this amazing artist, practitioner, artist of life, actually, and writer. She was on my show last year talking about her latest book, and we had such a lovely connection that I said, you gotta come back on later. And so I'm just so thrilled in the month of May, where we're talking about talent and transcendence, to have Dr. Laura Basha here with me again. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you. The pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you. I got goosebumps, Laura. I got goosebumps, because I have no doubt that this conversation that we're about to have is going to be transcendent and inspirational for not only us, but for anybody who's listening, because we're going to talk about beauty and beauty in the time of seeming crisis, right? You talk about this a lot in your writing.
Yes. Well, we definitely are at a time of crisis globally, meaning that we're at a transition point in human consciousness.
Yes.
And part of that transition, particularly with the availability of technology the way that it is now, is we can't really have our head in the sand anymore about all the different levels of consciousness that humanity holds. And part of the awakening to a higher level of awareness is being present to, if you will, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And to be able to do that without judgment, which is a stretch. It's challenging and sometimes feels impossible, but it's very doable, and it's the real work.
Yes, I totally agree. And you've said that for yourself, as you've been an artist all your life, and you said for yourself that the creative process became a gateway for you to become more peaceful and to experience freedom. I would imagine freedom from the fearful thoughts and conditions that we live in now. I would imagine is a huge tool for you right now.
Oh, sure. Well, when I was a kid, my childhood was pretty challenging, and I just naturally turned to art. So I would draw and without being consciously aware of it, it was an access for me to find peace and some kind of freedom from, suffering, really. And as I got older and became more interested in spiritual studies, metaphysical studies, personal growth and development work, I was able to really see that I had always had that connection to what we now refer to as, the moment of now or stillness. Mm-hmm. And it's a realm that is always available. It's equally everywhere present. We are looking at each other through it, even though we're in different cities. Right. And it's the oneness of humanity that we all belong to. Mm-hmm. So to practice aligning oneself with that quietness is a way to align oneself with all of humanity. And then the question is, what state of consciousness are you bringing to that oneness? And that realm of peace and joy and freedom from suffering is also the realm of beauty.
Yes.
It's an eternal realm.
An eternal realm, yes. And what you just said, Laura, is what is the consciousness you're bringing to that awareness, and because I have, wasn't going to talk about this, but we're talking about it. I have a friend who in her youth was a social activist, and just did all sorts of activist activities. She's one of my wisdom women that I go to, and she has gems that just fall out of her mouth, and right now she is activated and she's doing activism things. And we're watching this around the country right now. At the time that we're recording, like the colleges are activated. Now, is that activism really for unity, right? A higher up-leveling of consciousness for oneness, or is that activism? Sorry, you guys are going to have to ask yourself this question. Is the activism you're being drawn to creating unity and compassion and understanding for all, or is it creating more divisiveness, which the thing that activated you in the first place probably was witnessing divisiveness and chaos and death and dying and all that. So, and where do we find beauty in that, Laura?
Well, that's a
lot. I know.
That's a great example. It's happening now. I would say it could be both. One might be inspired to take literal action in the form of protest to make people aware of a certain point of view or a certain injustice that for many people they may not even be aware of. So it puts on the table a conversation of what is going on here? So in that sense, it can elevate awareness. You're still left with, okay, what do I do with that?
Right.
But that's a contribution. Now, it could be that somebody uses that as an opportunity to express their rage and, frustration. And then you would have to look to see, well, it triggers fear.
Right.
Then you have confrontation happening, and it's no longer a peaceful protest of elevating ideas. It becomes survival. And then you're sort of fallen into the same pit that you're protesting against. So it's a learning, and to use it. Okay, I am not someone who's going to go out and literally protest. For me, that's not the real work. And it's important because it addresses a certain level of awareness. Mm-hmm. My work is to recognize what's happening, not turn away from it, acknowledge my own reaction as a human being, because I have reactions. Mostly my reactions have to do with our disregard for the well-being of children and animals and in the environment. I mean, there's a lot happening here. But the only way I can truly make a difference is to take my reactions and bring them together with my capacity to be a conduit for peace. Now, that may sound woo-woo to people. I say that it is essential at this point that those of us who have had the interest and have trained ourselves for years, that's our work. And so I watch the news enough to find out what's happening, and then my job is to find my peace after I notice I'm getting triggered.
Yes. So that was an elegant way of explaining how we can elevate our consciousness individually and then collectively. Because I talk about this all the time, Laura. We are all conduits of spirit, of a higher source energy that we can't see, feel, touch. And because of that, it's important to be mindful of that oneness that we are in, like you were talking about earlier. And as we witness what looks like awful stuff, and like you said, bringing yourself into an alignment with peace within you, that peace, everybody, that peace, that love, that oneness we feel when we do our spiritual practices, or when we stop in the moment to go, wow, that's happening, let me just breathe. That goes into planet Earth, Mother Earth, and it also radiates, because we're all vibrations and frequencies. It radiates to everyone on the planet, all of humanity who's in need. So I would suggest, as you're feeling that sadness and compassion for what's happening on the other side of the planet, that love and compassion that you feel is already being sent to those individuals who are in need. Now it is woo. It's woo, right, Laura? It's just woo. But that's as important, everybody. Sending love, sending peace, sending compassion energetically is as important as boots on the ground delivering food or medicine or money to rebuild. It's as important. And in fact, it supports those individuals that are activated as activists to do their work as we do our work internally, with, in full alignment with a higher elevated consciousness than what's actually happening at the popping points, of around the world. So,
yeah, I would say a couple points to what you're saying. I would say, yes, we all have the potential for being conduits. We're designed that way.
Yes.
But one thing that might be helpful in finding our own peace in the face of the destruction that is happening in the world is that there are those who are so identified with their own thinking, their own attachment to the thoughts of their beliefs, that there isn't an awareness of the conduit that they are. Right. And so there needs to be, for those of us who are blessed to be able to even have this conversation, to have the awareness to recognize that we're conduits, it allows us to have some compassion for the unconsciousness of much of humanity. Mm-hmm. And so and I would also say it's not only as important as boots on the ground, it's more powerful than boots on the ground. Yes. It's the energy and frequency out of which all form has manifested. Yes. So to practice and to practice in times when there isn't much going on, when you're quiet and there's no interruptions, allows you to have access to that peace when you're traumatized. And I would say watching the news is a secondary trauma for us. And the news is not holding back on its fear. And if we're going to use the word woo, we need to elevate it to a distinction of its own instead of the sort of disparaging, dismissal that it sort of holds. And to practice aligning with that and here's the thing, you don't just practice it, in these kind of conversations. You practice it when you're dealing with that family member that, you see red as soon as they walk in the room. You practice it with your significant other. You practice it with your kids. You practice it in traffic. You practice it when you're late for a meeting and you're to check out line and there's somebody in front of you that can't find their credit card. The way you handle those kind of situations makes accessing peace available to all of humanity. It's that powerful. So for you to realize, for us to realize that not being annoyed at a stoplight that's long, but just finding your presence. Oh, I get an extra moment of being with myself. Is going to make patience available. Yes. It's going to make dissociating from attachment to personal thought available to people who are besotted with it and lost.
Yeah. So I want to circle back. I love what you said, Laura, and I want to circle back to what you said about elevating the woo phrase, the woo, so it's because it is, and you said disparaging. It is disparaging. And those of us that are elevated, those of us that do that elevated practice and grow our consciousness on a daily basis by doing exactly what you just said about gathering more patience and compassion. So what could we call it? Let's make up a new elevated phrase for woology or
I think we want to keep it simple, and it's just it's aligning with our essential nature, which is stillness.
Yes. Oh, I love it. Okay.
Yeah. But you probably have a better word than I do, but any word we come up with is not going to be big enough to carry it because words came out of it from the first place.
Right. I completely get that because when we begin to define or delineate, it makes it into a micro as opposed to a macro.
Yeah.
makes it much smaller, and the human mind wants to do that because we can't touch, feel, see it. We can definitely feel it when we're aligned. We feel that conduit of energy pouring in, through, and around us. But it's yeah, and that's why I call it source energy, because it sources our lives, our physical beingness. It sources everything.
Yes.
If we are aware and allow it to, right?
Yes. Yes.
So
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, we're so, myself included, identified with the form of our humanity that we forget that we really are creative sparks of the divine.
Exactly.
We are actually of the same substance as the stars in the sky, and the galaxies. It's all one substance out of which all things are formed.
Yeah. So you guys, you see why I adore this woman, because she gets right to it, and that's exactly what I feel as I live my life. It's a creative, divine givingness, divine spark, and when I pay attention to it, I get to create more, whatever that is, create more happiness or joy or fear. It just depends on how you align. So I want to read this definition, Laura, of beauty, because it's kind of what we're just talking about. Because it talks about high spiritual qualities. Okay, so from the dictionary, you guys, beauty, the quality present in a thing or person that gives intense pleasure or deep satisfaction to the mind, whether arising from sensory manifestations such as shape, color, sound, a meaningful design or pattern, or something else, as a personality in which high spiritual qualities are manifested. High spiritual qualities. So beauty, when we look at beauty, some people think art exists and it's in a museum. Let's go look at art. My husband and I do that all the time. We have art in our house all over the place. But when you're seeking beauty, the beauty is everywhere. If you're looking, when I go for a walk, I intentionally look at the plants and the flowers and the trees that are blooming right now, and I can see the Fibonacci sequence going on in those plants and flowers, right? I can feel the radiant energy coming off of the trees as their leaves are becoming so green, with that vibrant green. So beauty is everywhere. As long as we are consciously make ourselves aware that it's there, instead of trudging around. I have this idea of Pigpen from the Peanuts thing, where he's just covered in dirt all the time. He can't see beauty necessarily because he's just surrounded by this cloud. So, and Laura, as an artist, and you've got one of your phenomenal paintings behind you in this video, which to me is the divine spark. It looks like, I'm sure that was part of the inspiration. But so when, as an artist, I want us to encourage people that don't think of themselves as artists, and I used to be one, how to develop a practice or an exploration of art so that it does calm the spirit and the soul. So that it does bring in a sense of being present in the moment. Because I know when I do art, it takes me about an hour, I kid you not, for my brain to shut up, because it's constantly going. I'm trying to figure out the thing I'm supposed to be painting or drawing or whatever. And about an hour into the process, it calms down. My perfectionism drops out and I can just explore. So
that's great. That's a lot of territory you just covered. So there's the art of living. So beauty is a perceptual vantage point from which to perceive life. So if you're standing in stillness with no attention paid to your thinking, so for example, you're in nature and you're really present to the stillness and power of the trees or the flowers, or, still enough to see the Fibonacci sequence in a leaf. You're aligned with that realm of beauty, which is the same. It's a divine attribute of source. Everything we're looking for, we already have, and we just have to quiet down our thinking to hear it. It's the silence of listening to what we don't know. And it's the same process that you described with a painting. You're confronted with a blank canvas. And, I often will approach a piece with an idea in mind. And I do a sketch and I check the composition. And, I'm working with charcoal on top of a background. And then at a certain point, the painting starts to inform me of where it needs to go. So it's a definite process of letting go of your thinking. So what you describe is really the challenge for every artist. It's also the challenge for every human. It's the same challenge, which is to disengage from our thinking and be present and listen. Listen for what we don't know. I wrote a paper actually for a conference for global transformation years ago. It was called The Creative Process, a portal to not knowing, the nonverbal language of transformation. And it's on my website, but it's the answer to everything we're looking for, and we have it, but it's obscured with our judgments, our beliefs. We're so sometimes addicted really to our thought process that we don't even see the beautiful trees we're walking by.
Mm-hmm. It's true. It's very true. I have to stop myself. I see people walking in my neighborhood. They've got their earbuds in, they're listening to something, probably a podcast, and they're not necessarily observing where they are, and I'll say hi to them, but they aren't even looking at me because while their body's physically moving, they are in their head with whatever is going on in the earbuds or the story in their head or whatever. And it's fascinating to see people just walk right by you and not see you when you're right there.
So it's sort of for the egoic part of ourself, it's evidence of our separateness. And we need to keep proving that the identity needs to keep proving that we're separate, because that makes me superior somehow, to be separate and better than, and even being less than is a way to be superior in the other end of the spectrum, instead of really being present to the oneness that we are. It's the great illusion. It's the great illusion. We could move into a conversation about death and dying, which this culture does not like to do, but there's a quality of dying to the identity, which gives it freedom. And it's the experience of beauty is available everywhere, because it's the deathless part of us. There's no opposite to life. Life is eternal. Death is the opposite of birth.
Right.
But we are so identified with this little body and this story about this life, which is pretty short, actually. Yeah, I love what Eckhart Tolle says. He says, your life is represented by a dash of 1 or 2 inches between the year you were born and the year you died.
Yeah.
And it's he says to the ego, I think he says, this is depressing, but to you, it's liberating. So we can experience that liberation, the beauty of that freedom that we truly are while we're walking around in these little bodies. Yeah. And it just takes practicing, remembering, and noticing the places where you're challenged are your opportunity to get free.
Yes.
You can get righteous about your position, or you can think, wow, what was I so upset about? Why did I say that? You can actually get really fascinated with your own reactivity.
Yes.
And going deep into that will give you the freedom that you want. And the process is beautiful.
Thank you so much for that, because I currently am teaching a class and working on watching my reactivity. And up until recently, I was a person who would want to talk things out. Let's just talk this out. And all that, what I finally recognized is that doesn't change anything, doesn't fix anything. Talking it out might help me come to some kind of resolution, but really all it's doing is just keeping me stuck in that reaction and not moving forward.
It can. Now, if you're talking it out to someone who's truly listening to you, it will disappear. But that's a quality of listening that we mostly aren't practiced in. Yeah. So our reactivity is, for someone who's interested in growing and developing, your reactivity is your curriculum.
Oh my God. Is it?
And it never ends.
Well, as long as you're in a human body, it doesn't, because we are here experiencing contrast all the time, right? Like you were talking about just a while ago, the peace and then the activism, and that, finding that middle ground. That's the whole. Laura, I often see and feel this infinity symbol, going back and forth. I actually run it through my energy system sometimes just to clear, but I watch it or feel it, and it's this where the two circles, if you will, meet in the center. That's the balance point. That's the presence to me of where I can just go, okay, I'm present now, and then it goes out again as I'm learning, reacting, growing, and I come back to present, and then I goes, it's just one of my mental tools.
That's a creative process result. I would say that's art and beauty in action, where you have seen for yourself that symbol is communicates more than words. And those kinds of symbols can occur to everyone in a way that really speaks to them. So the infinity symbol might not be that for someone else, but it doesn't matter. So it's like a touchstone for you that reminds you.
Yes.
And there's great power, which is one of the reasons I love art. There's great power in the visual that takes you deeper than words can take you. Although except for certain poetry, there's certain poets that have the capacity to take you deeper than the words.
Yeah, I would agree with you. That's why I love going into an art gallery or a museum, or and just absorb whatever the feeling is that I am experiencing by looking at something. that someone else created out of their divine spark and wisdom. It's art and talent and beauty are available to all of us. I think all of us can be an artist in some way, some form. A person that does gardening is an artist, and the beauty that's created from the garden is the artwork, and we all have access to that. And the reason why is because we're all divine sparks. We're all a creative conduit, right?
Absolutely. And I see that creative process is available everywhere. It's available in business with people who have the capacity to really listen and be present and create maybe a business plan that's a little bit, outside of the norm, or to be able to target problems in the system, the organization, by sort of being willing to not have the answer, but listen for what you're missing. It's definitely available in motherhood. It's available in fatherhood. It's available in working with animals. It's a way of being. And when you're present and able to be present, as we were saying, as a conduit for our essential nature of stillness, as we can disidentify with our thinking. Identification with thought is mostly why humanity is suffering right now. And we're in the process of disengaging from that and becoming and awakening as a species to a whole other way of operating, which is coming from being. I don't know that we'll see it in our lifetime. Some of us will, but but this is what we're looking at. And it's a master doesn't turn away. So you want to be able to perceive what's happening, and then back to the beginning of our conversation, deal with yourself in terms of your disgust or your frustration or your limits of acceptance. Find your peace after you've acknowledged your lack of peace, which is another way of saying find love out of fear.
Yeah.
Because anything other than well-being is fear.
Yeah.
And there are two energies in the universe. One is love and one is fear, and love is the greater. That's why I was saying earlier, being, the boots on the ground is powerful, but being present and finding your peace in the midst of war is more powerful.
Yeah, I would agree.
And to do that in your everyday life when we feel hopeless looking at what's happening in the world, unless you're going to actually go with boots on the ground, what can we do? And what we're talking about is what we can do. And it absolutely makes a difference.
It does. It does. And what I notice, Laura, is when I take the time daily to realign or align in a different way to that higher energy, when I am out in the world, there is just this goodness that flows, and I find other goodness in other people, you just begin to see it more. If you find it within yourself, then you can see it more in others. I think the whole idea of self-love, self-care, self-respect helps co-create with others that idea of self-love, self-care, self-respect, compassion, because we begin to radiate it because love has no boundaries, right? There is no beginning or end to love. It's much bigger than anger and hatred. It is the overarching thing.
It's the binding, cohesive element of the universe.
Oh, I love that phrase. Binding. Love is the binding, cohesive element of the universe.
Yes. Yes.
I love that phrase. You're a writer too, Laura.
That's accurate.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? It'll come back. It left me.
It's okay.
You talking about love, and I was out there.
You're out there. I have on my wall a piece of art that I'm looking at, which is a stairway in a bookshop in Paris called Shakespeare and Company. I believe it's still there on the left bank. But this artist had written a poem by Hafiz on it, and it's a pretty famous poem, and I just want to read it to everybody right now. It says, "I wish I could show you when you are lonely or in darkness the astonishing light of your own being." I wish that for everyone, that we can begin to see the astonishing light that resides within each of us, and begin to radiate it and embrace that, because that's really, I really believe, everybody, and that's what's occurring right now. We are being called to be more love and be more light, and so that humanity's consciousness, even those that are not willing, able, aware, they can begin to feel that love and that light radiance, and lift up out of their fears and angers and sorrows.
And that light is actually illuminating what's not working as well.
Yes.
One of the things that we're pointing to is being willing to get present to what's actually happening, rather than approaching, which is a more natural human characteristic. It shouldn't be this way.
Right.
But it shouldn't be this way when it is the way that it is a recipe for upset. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the more we can be present to what's actually happening, not from a place of judgment, but from a place of investigation, then we have an opportunity to make a choice about what to do, what action to take to address it. Mm-hmm. So if you're looking at a problem without upset, then you're looking with clear perception.
Yeah.
And things will occur to us from that creative process, which is source.
Yeah.
Things will occur to us as solutions, which is another aspect of beauty. Love is infinite intelligence. The quietness is not the absence of intelligence. The quietness is connected to infinite intelligence, which is so much bigger than our personal intellectual understanding.
Mm-hmm. And that's where inspiration comes through, in the inspiration for co-creating, the inspiration for resolution, the inspiration for peace, right?
Yep. Absolutely.
It's a practice. It's an ongoing practice. It's a life practice. And I'm so grateful that you are practicing, and that I am practicing, and that our paths have met, and we're able to have these really juicy, powerful, inspiring conversations. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Susan. And thank you for having this podcast. I know it takes something to create something like this and to do it regularly. And I also know that kind of commitment comes out of a vision that's bigger than yourself. You're committed to something bigger than yourself. And that's what keeps us going in the face of all the challenges that happen in getting something done. Mm-hmm. I also really appreciate that you have invited me to have these conversations, because I'm really, my life's work has to do with people being free from the past and profoundly present, generating lives of authentic joy and freedom. So it's really my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Oh, I just adore you. I adore you. So, and everybody, if you want to see what Laura's up to, you can go to her website, which is whitebirdrising.com, and we'll have that in the show notes too, so you don't have to worry if you don't have a pencil or a piece of paper. Dr. Laura Basha, thank you. And I'm so glad that I know we're going to be talking again. So I already know it. Later in the year, we'll come back.
That'll be great.
We'll reassess, right? Or we'll elevate more.
Yes. That's
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you so much.
And I'm just going to end with, and so it is, namaste.
Well, that wraps up our empowering chat for the day. I hope you enjoyed it and found it inspired you to be more empowered. If you want to find out more about me, go to susanburrell.com, my website, and you can see what we're up to. I am teaching classes again, so there's a calendar of that, and you can register. You can check out my book, Live an Empowered Life, a 30-day journey with the companion inspiration cards, or you can access my guided meditations that go through Insight Timer. We got a bunch of stuff on the website. Check it out. And until then, namaste.